A man in a dark waxed jacket and worn jeans walks into the lobby of a private arts foundation in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and a woman at the reception desk looks at him and says he will need to be a member, or a guest of a member, to come inside. Not because of anything he said, not because of anything he did, because of what he is wearing. The jacket, the jeans, the absence of the particular signals, the lanyard, the name, the knowing ease of someone who has been here before, that the desk associate has been trained to look for. The man looks at her. He looks at the lobby. 12 feet behind her, mounted on a wall of pale sandstone in a brushed steel frame, is an oil portrait, 3 feet by 4, painted from life, formally commissioned in the way of portraits that institutions commission when they wish to honor a particular donor's long relationship with the work they support. The portrait is of him. He does not point this out. Not yet. He says, "Of course. I understand." He steps back. He waits. He does not reach for his phone. He does not raise his voice. He stands in the entryway of an institution whose lobby contains his likeness, and he is patient in the way of a person who knows exactly what is about to happen and has decided to let it happen at its own pace. 40 minutes later, in a room full of the most significant donors the Varela Arts Foundation had ever assembled, the portrait would be mentioned. Not by him, by the foundation's director. And the room, when it understood what had happened at the reception desk 37 minutes earlier, went very quiet in the particular way of people who have just realized that something they witnessed without noticing was a great deal more than it appeared. There is an arts foundation on Canyon Road in Santa Fe, New Mexico, called the Varela Foundation. Canyon Road is the city's gallery corridor, half a mile of adobe walls and courtyard gardens and institutions that take the work of contemporary art seriously in a way that is rare enough outside of a few cities to be worth noting, and the Varela Foundation sits at the upper end of it, in a building that was originally a private residence, added to twice in the 1980s and once in 2003, and that now contains 4 exhibition rooms, a library of contemporary art catalogs running to 11,000 volumes, a studio residency program for emerging artists that accepts 12 fellows per year from a pool of several hundred applicants, and a lobby with pale sandstone walls and the kind of light that comes only from clerestory windows angled to catch the afternoon sun in New Mexico, which is a different light from the afternoon sun anywhere else. Membership in the Varela Foundation begins at $2,500 per year. The Founders Circle, which is the designation given to donors who have made contributions totaling $500,000 or more over the life of their relationship with the foundation, carries its own set of privileges: access to the library at all hours, invitations to the annual acquisitions dinner, the right to bring guests to any exhibition without advance notice, and a framed print of the Foundation's annual commission, which each year is given to a different artist in the residency program, and which has, over 23 years of this practice, produced several works that now hang in major museum collections. The evening that is at the center of this story was the Foundation's annual gala. Not the acquisitions dinner. The gala, which was the larger event, attended by roughly 80 people and held in the main exhibition space, which was cleared of its usual installation for the evening and set with round tables and the particular floral arrangements favored by the Foundation's event coordinator, a woman named Beatrice, who had been doing this for 11 years and who had opinions about peonies that she was prepared to defend at length. The man had been a Founders Circle member for 9 years. He had given, over those 9 years, just under $1.4 million to the foundation, to the residency program specifically, because he believed in the specific thing it did. taking artists who were not yet the thing they were going to become, and giving them the time and the resources and the company of other serious people to become it. He had visited 3 times, always quietly, always without announcement. He had sat with 2 of the resident artists over those visits and talked with them about their work in the way of someone who was genuinely curious rather than performing curiosity. The portrait had been commissioned 4 years ago by the Foundation's board as part of a Founders Circle recognition series. He had sat for it once, for 3 hours, in a studio in Venice, California, and the painter, a Mexican-American woman named Solis, whose residency fellowship had preceded this commission by 7 years, and who had been selected for the portrait series specifically because of the quality of attention her work demonstrated, had produced something that the Foundation's director, a woman named Edith Carver, had called the most honest portrait the series had yielded. Not flattering. Honest. The distinction mattered to Edith, which was one of the reasons the Foundation's portrait series had the reputation it did. The portrait had been in the lobby for 4 years. The desk associate who was on duty the evening of the gala had been in the job for 6 weeks. Her name was Priya Rangan, and she was 22 years old, and she was doing exactly what she had been trained to do. His name, in the administrative records of the Varala Foundation, was listed under his full name, which Priya had seen in the membership database during her training, and which she would have recognized if she had encountered it in that context. She had not connected it to the man standing in front of her because the man standing in front of her was not arriving in the context of the membership database. He was arriving in the context of the front door, in a dark wax jacket and worn jeans, alone, on foot, having walked from wherever he had parked, without the particular physical grammar of a Founders Circle donor on gala night. Gala guests, in Priya's 6 weeks of experience, arrived in a specific way. They came in pairs or small groups. They wore things that signaled the evening. They often said their name before she asked for it, because they were accustomed to being received rather than processed. They carried the ease of people in familiar rooms. This man had arrived the other way. She asked, as she had been trained to ask, "Are you a member or a guest of a member?" He said, "I have a reservation under Reeves." She looked at the list. The list was alphabetical. She found Reeves K. easily enough. It was near the bottom, on the last page. And she looked at it, and something in her training caught on the single letter rather than the full name, and the single letter did not produce the connection that the full name would have. And she looked up at the man and looked back at the list and said, with the particular hesitation of someone who has found the name but is still running the 3-second assessment, "I'm showing you on our list, but I'm not seeing your membership confirmation here. Do you have something showing your current status?" He looked at her. He did not look at the portrait. "I don't," he said. "I don't usually carry documentation." She said, "I'm sorry. I need to be able to verify membership before I can admit gala guests who aren't accompanying a confirmed member." A pause. "I can call our membership coordinator if you'd like to wait." "Sure," he said. "I can wait." She called. The membership coordinator, whose name was Thomas, and who was at that moment managing the seating chart for 80 people in the exhibition room 30 feet away, did not answer. Priya looked at the man. "He's not picking up," she said. "I'm sorry. Would you like to take a seat while I try again in a few minutes?" "Of course," he said. He sat in the chair beside the reception desk, a low chair, upholstered in the warm rust color that characterized the Foundation's interior palette, and he looked at the lobby. He looked at the clerestory windows, through which the last of the Santa Fe afternoon was coming in at the angle that made the sandstone walls glow. He looked at the 11,000-volume library visible through the open double doors to the right. He looked at the portrait. He looked at the portrait for a moment. Then, he looked at his hands. Priya tried Thomas again. Thomas did not answer. She tried the Foundation's director, Edith Carver. Edith answered on the second ring. Priya explained the situation. A guest named Reeves on the list. No membership confirmation. Membership coordinator unavailable. There was a pause on the line. Priya, Edith said. Yes. Where is he now? Sitting in the lobby. Another pause. A shorter one. I'll be right there, Edith said. His name was Leonard Vaith, and he ran the membership and events desk at the Varala Foundation with the quiet authority of a man who understood that the people he managed, the Priya Rangans of the world, the young and earnest and well-intentioned new hires who arrived full of training and short on context, were not the problem. The system was the problem. Specifically, the gap between what the training covered and what the lobby actually required. He was 53 years old. He had worked in arts administration for 28 years, the last 9 of them at the Varala Foundation, where he had arrived the same year as the man who now sat in the rust-colored chair, and where he had, in those 9 years, developed the particular institutional knowledge that comes from being inside a place long enough to understand not just the policies, but the spirit beneath them. He had grown up in Albuquerque, 60 miles south of Santa Fe, in a neighborhood that did not have a canyon road in it, and did not particularly aspire to. His father was a mechanic. His mother taught 3rd grade for 31 years. They had taken him to the Albuquerque Museum when he was 8, and then again when he was 9. And then he had started asking to go on his own, which his mother had permitted because the museum was safe and free and seemed to be doing something to her son that she could not name but approved of. He had studied arts administration at the University of New Mexico. He had interned at 3 institutions in Albuquerque before landing a coordinator role at a small gallery in Taos that paid him next to nothing and gave him everything else. An education in what it meant to be in the room where art was taken seriously, and the specific kind of attention that seriousness demanded. He had been at the Varala Foundation for 9 years and had hired and trained 11 desk associates. And what he had learned in that time was that the training could cover the mechanics perfectly and still produce exactly what had happened in the lobby this evening. A young person correctly applying a correctly stated policy to exactly the wrong situation. He had not been at the desk when it happened because he had been setting up the exhibition room. He had not answered his phone because the room had been loud and his phone had been in his jacket pocket and he had not felt it. He found out what had happened 4 minutes after it did, when Edith Carver came out of the exhibition room with a look he had learned to read over 9 years, not upset. Exactly, but containing something that would need to be resolved, and told him. He went directly to the lobby. The man in the dark wax jacket was still in the rust-colored chair. He was looking at the portrait, not with any particular expression. Just looking, the way you look at something that is familiar and strange at the same time. Familiar because it is you, strange because it is you rendered by someone else's attention and placed on a wall where you did not expect to encounter it this evening. Leonard sat down in the chair beside him. "Mr. Reeves," he said. "I'm Leonard Vaith. I run events and membership. I want to apologize." The man looked at him. "Priya was doing her job," he said. "Please make sure she knows that." Leonard paused. "That's generous," he said. "It's accurate," he said. "She had a policy and a situation she couldn't verify, and she handled both of them correctly. The gap isn't in her. The gap is in what the training didn't cover." Leonard was quiet for a moment. "That is also accurate," he said. "How long has she been here?" 6 weeks. The man nodded. He looked back at the portrait. "Whoever painted that," he said, "got something right that most portraits don't." "Her name is Solis," Leonard said. She was a fellow here 7 years ago. I know, he said. She came to me. We talked for 3 hours before she started. He paused. She asked about the things I'd gotten wrong, not the things I was proud of, the things that hadn't worked out the way I'd intended. Leonard looked at the portrait. That's what's in it, he said. Yes, the man said. Edith Carver found them in the lobby 14 minutes after she had left it. She was 61 years old, had directed the Varala Foundation for 16 years, and had in that time developed a quality of professional composure that was not the absence of feeling, but its management. The specific skill of a person who runs an institution that matters and has learned that mattering is not the same as performing. She crossed the lobby and stood in front of the man in the dark wax jacket and said, "I am so sorry." He stood up. "Don't be," he said. "I'm glad I was here for it." She looked at him. "You're glad?" "Priya did what she was supposed to do," he said. "That's actually good news. It means she's paying attention." He paused. The thing she needed, the context, that's something that can be fixed. Edith looked at him for a long moment. "Come inside," she said. "Yes," he said. "Let's." She walked him into the exhibition room, and the room, 80 people, round tables, peonies, the foundation's best donors arranged in the particular configuration of people who have given money to something they believe in and are glad to be in the same room as each other, went quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when they register something arriving that they did not expect. Not because of who he was, because of Edith's face. She walked him to the center of the room, and she said, in the voice she used when she wanted to make sure every person in a room heard something, "Before we begin, I want to tell you what happened in our lobby 15 minutes ago." She told them. She told it without drama. The desk, the list, the weight, the rust-colored chair. She told it in the specific way of a person who has learned that the most effective stories are the ones that do not tell you what to feel. The room was very quiet by the time she finished. She said, "We have a portrait in our lobby that we commissioned to honor one of the most important relationships this foundation has had in 23 years. And 15 minutes ago, the person in that portrait sat in a chair in our lobby and waited patiently while we tried to figure out who he was." She paused. "He told me he was glad it happened. He said Priya was doing her job. He said the gap was in the training, not in her." She looked at him. "I want everyone in this room to know," she said, "that the person who handled that situation with more grace than it deserved was not the foundation. It was him." The room was still quiet. Then someone started clapping. It spread the way it always spreads when it means something, not because the room decided to, but because the room had to. He looked slightly embarrassed, which was the only time in the evening that he looked like anything other than a man who was simply where he had intended to be. He said, "When the room allowed it, Priya is 22 years old and 6 weeks into her first job in arts administration, and she did everything right. I'd like to meet her properly, if that's possible." Edith brought Priya in from the lobby. She stood at the edge of the exhibition room, in the way of a person who has been told something significant is about to happen and does not yet know what form it will take. He crossed the room to her. He shook her hand. He said, "You have good instincts. The training didn't give you the context you needed, and you made the best call you could with what you had. That's the thing that's hard to teach, and the thing that matters most." Priya said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "Don't be. Just remember this one." She looked at him. She looked at the portrait behind her, which was visible through the double doors of the exhibition room from where they were standing. She said, "I looked right at it." He said, "Most people do." Leonard Vaith revised the desk training materials the following week. The revision was not extensive. 4 pages added to a 30-page document, covering the specific gap the evening had revealed. The new section was titled Portrait Recognition and Founder Identification, which was a functional title and told the reader nothing of how it came to exist. The section covered 3 things. First, a protocol for cross-referencing the membership list with the Foundation's portrait and photography archive before each major event, so that desk associates had a visual reference for Founders Circle donors alongside their names. Second, a checklist for situations where verbal identification was not producing a match, specifically, steps to take before asking a guest to wait, including a direct escalation path that did not require the membership coordinator to answer his phone. Third, a note at the end of the section, written in Leonard's own voice rather than the institutional voice of the rest of the document, that said, "The people this foundation exists to honor are not always the people who look like they should be here. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are the person in the chair by the door who is patient enough to wait while we figure it out. Both things are worth remembering, and the second one is worth putting on the wall." He had not cleared that last paragraph with Edith. She read it and did not ask him to revise it. Priya Rangan stayed at the Varala Foundation for 4 years. She moved from desk associate to events coordinator to, in her 4th year, associate director of membership, which was the role that Leonard Vaith had held when she arrived, though Leonard had by then been promoted to deputy director of the foundation and had given her the job the same week he moved into his new office. She was good at the job. She was particularly good at the part of the job that most people in similar roles found most difficult, which was the onboarding of new desk associates, the training, the context, the gap between policy and what the lobby actually requires. She had a practice she introduced in her 2nd year coordinating the training. At the end of the first day, before the new hire went home, she walked them through the lobby and showed them the portraits, all of them. Not just the one. She told the story of each person in the frames, who they were, what they had given, why the portrait existed. She did not do it because the new hires needed to memorize faces. She did it because she had learned, on her 6th week on the job, that the people whose portraits hung on institutional walls were not abstractions. They were people who had walked through the same door, who had arrived the same way anyone arrives, in whatever they were wearing, with whatever they were carrying, hoping the room would receive them. She told the new hires, anyone who comes through that door has chosen to be here. That's already true before they say a word. Your job is to make sure they feel it. She did not tell them the story behind the practice. She did not need to. The portrait was right there. Edith Carver mentioned the evening at the Foundation's 25th anniversary gala, 3 years after it happened, in a speech that was otherwise about the residency program and the artists it had produced and what she believed the foundation was for. She said, "I have been asked, over 25 years, what this foundation is trying to do. There are long answers and short answers. The long answer is in the 11,000 books in the library and the 12 fellows who arrive each year and the portraits on the wall. The short answer is something I learned 3 years ago in our own lobby. We are trying to be a room that receives people the way they deserve to be received. Not based on what they're wearing. Not based on how they arrived. Based on the fact that they came." She did not say whose name was on the portrait. Everyone in the room knew. The new desk associate, 7 weeks in, nervous, sitting in the back row where the staff chairs were, did not know. She had not yet been walked through the portraits. That happened on Friday. She looked at the portrait anyway, because she could see it through the double doors, and she thought it was a good painting. She was right about that. There is a particular kind of irony that a room does not know it is living inside until someone names it. The portrait hangs there. The lobby receives its guests. The policies are applied with the correctness of people who have been trained to apply them. And the thing that is ironic, the gap between what the institution knows and what the institution does, is invisible until it is suddenly completely visible, in the form of a man sitting patiently in a rust-colored chair beneath his own likeness. I don't know what I would have done in that chair. I would like to think I would have been patient. I would like to think I would have said, as he said, that the desk associate was doing her job and the gap was in the training. But there is something about sitting beneath a portrait of yourself and being asked to prove who you are that I suspect would test the patience of most people, however composed they believe themselves to be. What he did, what he chose to do in the 40 minutes before anyone understood what was happening, was extend to the institution the same assumption of good faith that the institution had failed to extend to him. He treated Priya's mistake as a systems problem before it could become a personal one. He located the gap in the training rather than in the person, which is a distinction that requires both intelligence and generosity to make. And he made it at the moment when generosity was least required of him and most valuable to someone else. Priya remembered it. Leonard revised the training. Edith told the story at the 25th anniversary gala. A new desk associate, 7 weeks in, sat in the back row and looked at the portrait and thought it was a good painting without yet knowing what it meant. That is how things travel, not through the obvious channels, through the rooms that receive them. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for humility and the particular grace of people who do not need to announce their own significance. If something in this one stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me what you took from it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. See you in the next one.